If you enjoyed this audiobook, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge. And when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the audiobook. Chapter 1, Embracing Reality and Truth. Part 1, Hyperrealism. Balancing big dreams with stark reality. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings nearly killed his company in 2011 by splitting DVD and streaming services into separate entities, customers revolted so fiercely that the stock plummeted 80%. Most leaders would have doubled down on their vision. Instead, Hastings faced an uncomfortable truth. His timing was wrong, and his execution was flawed. Within months, he reversed course, admitting his mistake publicly. Ray Dalio calls this approach hyperrealism, the disciplined practice of pursuing ambitious goals while maintaining brutal honesty about current circumstances. It requires holding two seemingly contradictory ideas simultaneously, dreaming big while seeing clearly. This isn't pessimism disguised as wisdom. It's recognizing that reality, however harsh, provides the only reliable foundation for meaningful progress. Consider SpaceX's early years. Elon Musk's vision of colonizing Mars seemed absurd to industry experts. Yet Musk practiced hyperrealism by acknowledging that his first 3 rocket launches had failed spectacularly, nearly bankrupting the company. Rather than sugarcoating these failures or abandoning his vision, he analyzed each failure methodically. He faced the uncomfortable reality that his team lacked critical expertise while maintaining the audacious goal of revolutionizing space travel. This balance between ambitious vision and stark assessment of current capabilities ultimately led to breakthrough innovations. Most organizations struggle with this balance. They either become so realistic they lose their ambition, or so visionary they ignore warning signs. Theranos exemplified the latter extreme. Elizabeth Holmes maintained grand promises about revolutionary blood testing while ignoring fundamental scientific limitations. The company's collapse demonstrates what happens when vision becomes detached from reality. Dalio learned this lesson through painful experience at Bridgewater Associates. In 1982, he predicted an economic depression that never materialized, nearly destroying his firm. This failure taught him that wishful thinking, whether optimistic or pessimistic, clouds judgment. He developed systematic approaches to test his assumptions against observable evidence. The practice requires emotional discipline. When blockbuster executives saw Netflix's early streaming attempts, they dismissed them as technically inferior. They weren't wrong about the immediate quality issues. However, they failed to recognize the trajectory of technological improvement and changing consumer preferences. Their realistic assessment of current capabilities prevented them from seeing emerging realities. Hyperrealism means constantly asking, what am I missing? What uncomfortable truths am I avoiding? It involves actively seeking information that challenges your preferred narrative. Amazon's Jeff Bezos institutionalized this through disagree and commit meetings, where teams thoroughly explored opposing viewpoints before making decisions. This approach transforms setbacks into strategic advantages. When Airbnb faced near bankruptcy in 2008, founders Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia didn't abandon their vision of revolutionizing travel. Instead, they faced the reality that their product wasn't meeting user needs. They personally visited hosts and guests, discovering fundamental flaws in their platform design. This hyper-realistic assessment led to crucial pivots that saved the company. The key is maintaining intellectual honesty while preserving motivational energy. Dreams provide direction and fuel persistence through inevitable obstacles. Reality provides the feedback necessary for course correction and tactical adjustment. Part 2, Radical Truth and Transparency. Building trust and clarity. At Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund, meetings look nothing like traditional corporate gatherings. Employees openly challenge CEO Ray Dalio's ideas in front of colleagues. Junior analysts critique senior partners without fear of retribution. Dalio calls this radical truth and transparency, and it has generated extraordinary returns for decades. The concept emerged from Dalio's recognition that most organizations operate on pleasant fictions. People smile, nod, and privately harbor doubts about strategies and leadership decisions. This polite deception creates blind spots that can destroy companies. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings introduced the controversial keeper test culture, he borrowed directly from Dalio's playbook. Employees who wouldn't fight to retain a colleague must honestly communicate performance concerns rather than hoping problems resolve themselves. Research by Harvard Business School professor Amy Edmondson reveals why this approach works. Teams with psychological safety, where members feel secure expressing dissent, outperform hierarchical cultures by significant margins. Google's Project Aristotle identified psychological safety as the primary factor distinguishing high-performing teams from mediocre ones. The difference isn't talent or resources, but the freedom to share uncomfortable truths without political consequences. Building this environment requires deliberate structural changes. Dalio implemented dot collector meetings, where participants rate each other's contributions in real time using iPads. Initially jarring, this system forces immediate, specific feedback rather than vague annual reviews. Participants quickly learn to separate personal identity from professional critique. The key insight? Most people avoid difficult conversations not from malice, but from uncertainty about how to deliver constructive criticism effectively. Consider how Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard handles transparency. When environmental groups criticize the company's supply chain practices, Chouinard published detailed factory information on Patagonia's website. This radical openness allowed external stakeholders to identify specific improvement areas. Rather than defending against criticism, Patagonia transformed critics into collaborative problem solvers. The challenge lies in implementation. Leaders must model vulnerability before expecting it from others. When Dalio publicly shares his mistakes and reasoning flaws, he signals that intellectual honesty trumps ego protection. This creates permission for others to acknowledge their own limitations and knowledge gaps. Organizations transitioning to radical transparency often experience initial turbulence. Long-suppressed frustrations surface rapidly. However, companies that persevere through this adjustment period report faster problem resolution and stronger team cohesion. The temporary discomfort of confronting reality pays dividends in accelerated learning cycles and reduced blind spots. The transformation requires patience and consistent reinforcement. Cultural change doesn't happen through single conversations, but through repeated demonstrations that truth-telling enhances rather than threatens job security. When people witness honest feedback leading to promotions and improved outcomes, behavior shifts naturally. Part 3. Learning from failures. The art of failing well. When Bridgewater Associates lost $6 billion in a single day during the 2000 dot-com crash, most hedge fund leaders would have retreated into damage control mode. Ray Dalio did something different. He gathered his team and dissected every decision that led to the catastrophe, treating the pain as raw material for future success. This approach exemplifies what Dalio calls his most powerful formula. Pain plus reflection equals progress. The equation sounds simple, but implementing it requires rewiring fundamental human instincts. Most people experience failure and immediately seek comfort or blame external factors. Dalio discovered that the discomfort following mistakes contains invaluable information about reality. Consider how Netflix transformed from a DVD by mail service to streaming giant. When CEO Reed Hastings announced the disastrous Quickster spin-off in 2011, customers revolted and stock prices plummeted. Instead of defending the decision, Hastings publicly admitted the mistake, analyzed what went wrong, and pivoted strategy. The painful lesson about customer communication became foundational to Netflix's subsequent market dominance. The key lies in timing reflection properly. Immediate post-failure analysis often produces emotional responses rather than clear insights. Dalio suggests waiting until the initial sting subsides, then systematically examining three elements: the original assumption, the decision-making process, and the execution quality. This methodical approach prevents the same mistakes from recurring. Microsoft's Satya Nadella exemplifies this principle in practice. When he became CEO in 2014, he inherited a company struggling with mobile innovation failures. Rather than ignoring past missteps, Nadella institutionalized failure analysis sessions where teams presented their biggest mistakes alongside lessons learned. This cultural shift contributed to Microsoft's remarkable turnaround, with stock prices increasing over 500% during his tenure. The biological reality supports Dalio's approach. Neuroscientists have discovered that emotional pain from failure activates the same brain regions as physical injury. This explains why people naturally avoid confronting mistakes. However, research shows that deliberate reflection after setbacks strengthens neural pathways associated with learning and adaptation. Organizations that master this principle create competitive advantages. Amazon's Jeff Bezos famously celebrated intelligent failures, understanding that innovation requires experimentation. The company's willingness to analyze and learn from products like the Fire Phone enabled successes with Alexa and AWS. The challenge involves distinguishing between productive pain and destructive suffering. Productive pain comes from facing reality about performance gaps or strategic errors. Destructive suffering stems from ruminating without taking action or learning. Dalio emphasizes moving quickly from pain to reflection to implementation. Personal application requires creating systems for failure analysis. This might involve regular self-assessments, seeking feedback from trusted advisors, or maintaining decision journals to track outcomes. The goal isn't avoiding mistakes, but extracting maximum learning from inevitable setbacks. When people embrace this formula, failures transform from sources of shame into catalysts for improvement. The pain becomes temporary, but the progress endures permanently. Part 4. Radical Open-Mindedness, Navigating Change with Humility. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, the company stood on bankruptcy's edge. Rather than defending past strategies, Jobs demonstrated something rare among leaders: complete willingness to abandon previous assumptions. This radical open-mindedness saved Apple and transformed it into the world's most valuable company. Ray Dalio built Bridgewater Associates on this same principle. He discovered early in his career that his biggest investment mistakes came not from lack of information, but from his inability to consider perspectives that challenged his existing beliefs. In 1982, Dalio publicly predicted an economic depression that never materialized, nearly destroying his firm. This painful experience taught him that ego was his greatest enemy. The human brain naturally resists information that contradicts established beliefs. Psychologists call this confirmation bias, and it affects everyone from Nobel laureates to street vendors. When presented with conflicting evidence, our minds automatically search for reasons to dismiss it rather than genuinely evaluate its merit. This mental shortcut served our ancestors well when quick decisions meant survival, but it creates dangerous blind spots in modern decision-making. Consider how Kodak's leadership responded to digital photography in the 1990s. Despite inventing the digital camera, executives dismissed its potential because it threatened their profitable film business. Their closed-mindedness cost 140,000 jobs and destroyed a century-old company. Meanwhile, companies like Canon and Sony remained open to digital possibilities and captured the market. Dalio suggests treating your brain like a computer that needs constant software updates. Just as outdated programs crash when encountering new data, rigid thinking fails when reality shifts. The most successful people actively seek out disagreement and criticism. Jeff Bezos institutionalized this at Amazon through his disagree and commit principle, encouraging teams to challenge decisions before implementing them wholeheartedly. Practical open-mindedness requires specific techniques. When someone disagrees with you, resist the urge to immediately formulate counter-arguments. Instead, Ask yourself, what if they're right? This simple question activates different neural pathways and allows genuine consideration of alternative viewpoints. Warren Buffett exemplifies this approach through his annual shareholder meetings, where he welcomes tough questions about Berkshire Hathaway's mistakes and shortcomings. Rather than becoming defensive, Buffett uses criticism as market research, often adjusting strategies based on shareholder feedback. The key is distinguishing between being open-minded and being wishy-washy. Open-mindedness means gathering diverse perspectives before reaching conclusions, then holding those conclusions tentatively, ready to modify them with new evidence. It requires intellectual courage to admit when you're wrong, and emotional intelligence to separate your ego from your ideas. Building this skill transforms decision-making from a battle of egos into a collaborative search for truth. When people feel heard and valued for their input, they contribute more honestly and enthusiastically to group efforts. Chapter 2: Life Principles for Success. Part 1: Defining what you want. Clarity of goals. Ray Dalio learned about goal clarity the hard way when Bridgewater Associates nearly collapsed in the early 1980s. After making bold predictions that proved spectacularly wrong, he realized his fundamental mistake wasn't bad analysis. It was pursuing unclear objectives driven by ego rather than genuine purpose. Most people confuse activity with progress because they never define what they actually want. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings made the controversial decision to split DVD and streaming services in 2011, customers revolted and stock prices plummeted. But Hastings had crystallized his true goal: building the future of entertainment, not protecting existing revenue streams. That clarity guided every subsequent decision, transforming Netflix into the streaming giant we know today. The difference between wanting something and truly committing to it becomes clear when you examine your daily choices. Warren Buffett's famous two-list strategy demonstrates this perfectly. He asked his pilot to write down 25 career goals, circle the top 5, then avoid the remaining 20 at all costs. Those 20 weren't bad goals. They were distractions that would prevent achieving what mattered most. Distinguishing wants from needs requires brutal honesty about your motivations. Research from psychologist Tim Kasser at Knox College shows that people who prioritize intrinsic goals, like personal growth and meaningful relationships, report significantly higher life satisfaction than those chasing external validation or material wealth. Yet most goal-setting advice focuses entirely on external markers of success. Consider how Amazon founder Jeff Bezos approached this distinction. In 1994, he used what he called the regret minimization framework, imagining himself at 80 years old and asking what he'd regret not trying. This mental exercise revealed that his core desire wasn't job security at a hedge fund, but building something meaningful in the emerging internet space. The daily alignment between actions and aspirations separates dreamers from achievers. When Oprah Winfrey transitioned from local news anchor to talk show host, she faced criticism for being too emotional on camera. Instead of changing her style, she recognized that authentic connection was her true goal, not traditional journalism success. Every career decision afterward supported this core objective. Intrinsic motivation becomes your competitive advantage when goals align with personal values. Research by psychologist Edward Decky shows that people pursuing internally motivated goals demonstrate greater persistence, creativity, and satisfaction than those driven by external rewards alone. This explains why many lottery winners return to their original happiness levels within years. External achievement without internal alignment proves hollow. Building the discipline to pursue goals consistently requires understanding your own psychology. When author Stephen King was struggling with alcoholism, he didn't stop writing. He changed how he wrote. He moved his writing time to early morning when his willpower was strongest, recognizing that protecting his craft required working with his patterns rather than against them. The most successful people treat goal setting as an ongoing conversation with reality, not a one-time declaration. They regularly assess whether their objectives still serve their deeper purpose, adjusting course when circumstances change, while maintaining unwavering commitment to what truly matters most. Part 2. Understanding reality. Accurate perception as foundation. When Amazon's board confronted Jeff Bezos about the company's massive losses in 2001, most CEOs would have spun the numbers or deflected blame. Instead, Bezos presented a brutally honest assessment. Amazon had expanded too fast, hired poorly in many divisions, and burned through cash without sufficient discipline. This radical honesty with reality became the foundation for one of business history's greatest turnarounds. Most people live in a fog of self-created illusions. We tell ourselves we're better drivers than average, that our memory of events is accurate, and that our failures stem from bad luck rather than poor choices. Research by psychologist David Dunning reveals that incompetent people consistently overestimate their abilities, while skilled individuals underestimate theirs. This fundamental disconnect from reality costs us dearly in every aspect of life. The human brain evolved to protect our ego, not to perceive truth. We unconsciously filter information that contradicts our beliefs, while amplifying data that confirms what we already think. When Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes continued claiming her blood testing technology worked despite mounting evidence to the contrary, she wasn't just lying to investors. She had convinced herself the problems were temporary setbacks rather than fundamental flaws. Breaking through these mental barriers requires systematic effort. The most successful people develop what psychologists call accurate self-awareness. They see themselves as others see them. Warren Buffett famously keeps a folder of his investment mistakes, reviewing them regularly, not for self-flagellation, but for pattern recognition. He understands that acknowledging reality, however uncomfortable, provides the raw material for better decisions. Creating feedback loops becomes essential for maintaining this clear-eyed perspective. Bill Gates implemented 7-Ups. At Microsoft, meetings where employees could challenge his decisions without career consequences. This wasn't masochism, it was recognition that reality exists independent of what we wish were true. The market doesn't care about our feelings or excuses. Physical evidence trumps opinion every time. When McDonald's executives insisted their restaurants were clean enough, founder Ray Kroc would surprise visit locations with white gloves, checking surfaces that employees thought no one would examine. He knew that standards exist in actions, not intentions. What gets measured and examined honestly gets managed effectively. The most painful truths often contain the most valuable insights. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings realized that DVD by mail would eventually become obsolete, he didn't wait for competitors to force the transition. Despite massive internal resistance and short-term profit loss, Netflix pivoted to streaming. This willingness to confront uncomfortable realities before they become crises separates thriving organizations from those that merely survive. Reality doesn't negotiate. It simply is. The sooner we align our perceptions with this fundamental truth, the sooner we can make decisions that actually work in the real world. Part 3. The 5-step process, getting what you want out of life. When Bridgewater Associates faced near collapse in 1982, Ray Dalio discovered that surviving required more than good intentions or hard work. It demanded a systematic method for turning obstacles into stepping stones. This realization led to his development of a 5-step process that has since guided countless individuals and organizations through their most challenging moments. The first step involves setting clear goals that reflect what you genuinely want, not what others expect from you. Sarah Blakely exemplified this when she decided to create Spanx. Rather than accepting conventional wisdom about the hosiery industry, she defined her goal precisely: to create footless pantyhose that would make women feel confident. Her clarity about the specific problem she wanted to solve became the foundation for building a billion-dollar company. Step 2 requires identifying problems without tolerating them. Most people either ignore problems or accept them as permanent fixtures. Dalio argues this approach guarantees mediocrity. When McDonald's noticed declining sales in the early 2000s, leadership could have blamed changing consumer preferences. Instead, they identified the core problem. Their menu no longer matched evolving health consciousness. This honest acknowledgement became the catalyst for transformation. The third step involves diagnosing root causes rather than treating symptoms. This requires asking why repeatedly until you reach the fundamental issue. When Toyota revolutionized manufacturing through their production system, they didn't simply fix individual defects. They diagnosed that most problems stemmed from workers being afraid to stop the line when they noticed issues. By addressing this fear and empowering employees to halt production for quality concerns, they eliminated countless downstream problems. Step 4 focuses on designing solutions that address root causes effectively. This often means rejecting quick fixes in favor of comprehensive approaches. When Satya Nadella became Microsoft's CEO, he didn't just adjust existing strategies. He diagnosed that the company's competitive culture was stifling innovation and collaboration. His solution involved fundamentally redesigning performance reviews, compensation structures, and company values to promote learning over knowing. The final step demands relentless execution without making excuses. Jeff Bezos demonstrated this when Amazon consistently operated at losses for years while building infrastructure and capabilities. Despite investor pressure and criticism, he executed his long-term vision methodically. Understanding that sustainable success requires patience and persistence. What makes this process powerful is its iterative nature. Each completed cycle provides data for the next round of goal setting. The key lies in treating each step as equally important. Many people excel at setting goals, but fail at problem identification. Others diagnose issues brilliantly, but struggle with execution. This systematic approach transforms overwhelming challenges into manageable sequences. Instead of hoping for different outcomes while repeating the same behaviors, you create a reliable method for continuous improvement that compounds over time. Part 4. People's differences. Harnessing diverse wiring. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he faced a critical decision that would define the company's future. Instead of trying to change his team members into different people, he chose to position them according to their natural abilities. Jonathan Ive's visual genius flourished in design, while Tim Cook's operational precision transformed supply chains. This strategic alignment of individual strengths with roles created unprecedented innovation and efficiency. Most organizations operate under a fundamental misconception. They believe everyone should think and work the same way. This approach wastes tremendous human potential. Research by Harvard Business School professor Amy Edmondson reveals that teams with diverse cognitive styles outperform homogeneous groups by 35% on complex problem-solving tasks. Yet many leaders continue forcing square pegs into round holes. Your brain processes information differently than your colleagues' brains. Some people excel at big-picture thinking, while others spot crucial details. Certain individuals thrive under pressure, while others produce their best work in calm environments. These aren't character flaws to fix, they're competitive advantages to harness. Consider how Ray Kroc built McDonald's empire. He recognized that franchise success required different personality types in different roles. Detail-oriented managers handled operations, while relationship builders managed customer service. Kroc didn't try to make detail people into relationship experts or vice versa. He matched natural abilities with business needs. Modern neuroscience supports this approach. Dr. Daniel Siegel's research shows that brain structure variations create distinct thinking patterns. Some brains favor analytical processing, while others excel at intuitive decision-making. Neither approach is superior. They're complementary tools for solving different types of problems. The key lies in accurate assessment rather than wishful thinking. Personality tests like Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder provide useful starting points, but direct observation proves more reliable. Watch how people actually perform under various conditions. Notice what energizes them versus what drains their motivation. Bridgewater Associates, Dalio's hedge fund, revolutionized this concept through radical transparency. Employees receive detailed feedback about their thinking styles and natural talents. Rather than hiding weaknesses, the company openly discusses them and structures teams accordingly. A brilliant researcher who struggles with client presentations focuses on analysis, while natural communicators handle investor relations. This approach requires abandoning the fantasy that everyone can excel at everything. Accept that your methodical planner will never become a spontaneous creative type. Instead of fighting these realities, design systems that amplify natural strengths while minimizing the impact of weaknesses. Smart team composition becomes an art form. Combine complementary thinking styles rather than similar ones. Pair cautious analysts with bold risk-takers. Match creative visionaries with practical implementers. This diversity creates robust decision-making processes that consider multiple perspectives and catch potential blind spots. The ultimate goal isn't harmony through similarity, but effectiveness through strategic differences. When people operate within their natural strengths while understanding others' contributions, collaboration becomes exponentially more powerful than any individual effort. Chapter 3: Work Principles and Organizational Culture, Part 1. Idea Meritocracy, Believability-weighted decision-making. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings received harsh feedback about a major strategic decision during a company meeting, he didn't silence the criticism or pull rank. Instead, he engaged with the challenge directly, weighing the credibility of each perspective based on track records and expertise rather than job titles. This exemplifies Ray Dalio's revolutionary approach to organizational decision-making through idea meritocracy. Traditional corporate hierarchies often suppress the best solutions because they emerge from unexpected sources. Dalio discovered this firsthand at Bridgewater Associates when junior analysts repeatedly identified market opportunities that senior executives missed. The problem wasn't intelligence, it was a system that prioritized position over insight. This realization led to developing believability-weighted decision-making, where every voice carries weight proportional to their credibility on specific topics. The mechanics work through sophisticated but practical tools. Bridgewater's famous dot voting system allows team members to rate ideas and arguments in real time during meetings. Each person's dots carry different weights based on their demonstrated expertise and past accuracy on similar issues. A software engineer's opinion on technical architecture carries more weight than a marketing director's view on the same topic, while the reverse applies to customer acquisition strategies. Google implemented a similar approach through data-driven decision-making that considers source credibility. When product teams evaluate new features, contributions from engineers with successful launch histories receive higher consideration than those from newcomers, regardless of formal rank. This system helped Google avoid numerous costly mistakes while accelerating innovation cycles. The algorithm behind believability weighting considers multiple factors: domain expertise, past accuracy, quality of reasoning, and track record on similar decisions. At Bridgewater, these calculations happen automatically during discussions, creating transparent credibility scores that guide final choices. The result removes ego and politics from critical decisions. Real benefits emerge quickly in organizations that adopt these principles. Ray Dalio's hedge fund consistently outperformed competitors, partly because investment decisions came from the most credible sources rather than the highest-paid executives. When market analysts with proven track records disagreed with senior partners, their perspectives often prevailed, leading to better outcomes. This approach requires cultural shifts that many leaders find uncomfortable. Jeff Bezos faced similar challenges at Amazon when implementing customer-obsessed decision-making that sometimes contradicted executive intuition. However, companies that successfully transition report faster problem-solving, improved employee engagement, and reduced decision-making errors. The most compelling evidence comes from organizations that transformed their cultures entirely. When companies stop filtering ideas through hierarchical approval chains and instead evaluate them based on merit and source credibility, innovation accelerates dramatically. The best ideas truly do win, creating environments where talent thrives, regardless of organizational position. Part 2. Meaningful work and relationships. Aligning passion and cooperation. When Patagonia's founder, Yvon Chouinard, restructured his company around environmental activism in the 1980s, productivity soared 40%, while employee turnover dropped to nearly zero. This transformation revealed a powerful truth. Meaningful work amplifies performance when personal values align with organizational mission. The connection between purpose-driven work and strong relationships creates a compound effect that most leaders underestimate. At Interface Inc., CEO Ray Anderson's environmental mission didn't just reduce the company's carbon footprint. It fundamentally changed how employees collaborated. Teams began sharing resources across departments. Engineers worked directly with sales staff on sustainable solutions, and innovation cycles shortened from years to months. The shared purpose eliminated traditional silos. Trust forms the foundation of this alignment, but building it requires deliberate practice. Mark Benioff at Salesforce discovered this when implementing his equality initiatives. Rather than mandating cultural change from above, he created transparency around salary gaps and promotion processes. Employees could see the company's commitment through concrete actions, not just mission statements. This approach generated the psychological safety necessary for both meaningful work and genuine cooperation. The most effective organizations recognize that individual passions often contain hidden organizational assets. When 3M allowed engineer Art Fry to pursue his useless bookmark project, they discovered Post-it notes, generating billions in revenue. But the deeper lesson involves how passion projects create relationship networks. Fry's experimentation connected him with researchers across divisions, creating informal collaboration channels that outlasted the original project. Personal fulfillment and collective achievement reinforce each other through what researchers call pro-social motivation. Adam Grant's studies at Google showed that employees who understood how their work impacted end users demonstrated 20% higher performance and significantly stronger peer relationships. This connection happens because meaningful work creates emotional investment, making people more willing to support colleagues and share knowledge. Building these connections requires intentional design rather than hoping they emerge naturally. Netflix's culture document explicitly states that stunning colleagues surround every employee. This philosophy shapes both hiring decisions and daily interactions. Teams regularly discuss how individual goals serve the broader mission, creating accountability partnerships that strengthen both work quality and interpersonal bonds. The practical application involves creating forums where passion meets purpose. At Bridgewater, weekly principalism meetings allow employees to connect personal interests with business challenges. These sessions generate unexpected solutions while building relationships across traditional boundaries. Engineers discover marketing insights, operations staff contribute to strategic planning, and everyone develops deeper appreciation for colleagues' unique contributions. Real transformation occurs when organizations stop viewing meaningful work and relationships as separate initiatives. They become integrated systems where individual fulfillment drives collective success, creating sustainable competitive advantages that competitors struggle to replicate. Part 3. Managing mistakes, cultivating a learning culture. When Barclays Bank faced a massive trading scandal in 2012, CEO Anthony Jenkins made a radical decision that would reshape the entire organization. Instead of quietly disciplining the responsible parties, he mandated that every mistake be discussed openly in monthly failure forums. Within 2 years, Barclays reduced operational errors by 73%, while employee engagement scores soared to industry-leading levels. This counterintuitive approach reflects what Ray Dalio discovered during his most painful business failure. In 1982, his prediction of an economic depression nearly destroyed Bridgewater Associates, forcing him to lay off employees and borrow money from his father. Rather than hiding this catastrophe, Dalio transformed it into his greatest teacher. He realized that organizations either learn from mistakes or repeat them endlessly. The traditional corporate response treats errors like infections to be contained. Performance reviews become exercises in blame distribution. Teams develop sophisticated systems for hiding problems from management. Meanwhile, the same mistakes cascade through different departments, creating expensive patterns that persist for years. Toyota's initial response to acceleration problems in 2009 exemplifies this dysfunction. Their defensive posture and delayed recalls cost billions while damaging customer trust for decades. Dalio advocates for radical transparency around failures. At Bridgewater, every mistake triggers immediate investigation, not punishment. Teams conduct postmortems that focus exclusively on understanding root causes. These sessions follow strict protocols, no blame assignments, no defensive explanations, only systematic analysis of what actually happened versus what was intended. The key mechanism involves separating the person from the problem. When software engineer Sarah Chen accidentally deleted critical customer data at Buffer in 2019, CEO Joel Gascoigne's response became legendary. Instead of reprimanding Chen, he publicly thanked her for discovering a security vulnerability. The company implemented stronger backup systems and promoted Chen to lead their new data integrity team. This approach requires fundamental shifts in how organizations measure success. Traditional metrics punish visible failures while rewarding hidden risks. Dalio suggests tracking learning velocity, how quickly teams identify, analyze, and implement solutions from mistakes. Companies that measure learning speed consistently outperform those focused solely on error prevention. Creating psychological safety becomes essential for this transformation. Google's Project Aristotle found that teams with high psychological safety made more mistakes but achieved significantly better outcomes. Team members felt comfortable admitting errors early when solutions remained manageable. Fear-based cultures fears problems underground until they become crises. The practical implementation starts small but scales systematically. Weekly mistake meetings replace traditional status updates. Teams share recent errors, analysis progress, and implemented improvements. These sessions celebrate learning rather than perfection, gradually shifting organizational DNA from risk aversion to intelligent experimentation. Organizations that master this approach develop competitive advantages that compound over time. They adapt faster to market changes, innovate more effectively, and build stronger teams. Most importantly, they create environments where people grow rather than hide, accelerating both individual development and collective capability. Part 4. Machine metaphor for organizations. Managing institutions as systems. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he didn't just restructure departments. He redesigned the entire company as an integrated machine. This mechanical approach to organizational design reflects Ray Dalio's foundational insight. The most successful institutions operate like well-engineered systems, where every component serves a specific function and connects purposefully to achieve desired outcomes. Building on the learning culture that transforms mistakes into growth opportunities, organizations must now evolve into sophisticated machines that can adapt and optimize continuously. Dalio discovered this principle through decades of managing Bridgewater Associates, where he observed that companies fail not from lack of talent, but from poorly designed systems that waste human potential. Think of your organization as a factory assembly line. Each department represents a distinct machine component. Each employee fulfills a specific role, and information flows like raw materials through predetermined channels. Amazon exemplifies this approach magnificently. Jeff Bezos designed Amazon's fulfillment centers as precise mechanical systems, where every process connects seamlessly to the next. Workers follow standardized procedures, data flows through automated feedback loops, and continuous optimization drives efficiency improvements. The machine metaphor transforms how leaders approach organizational challenges. Instead of viewing problems as personality conflicts or random failures, mechanical thinking identifies system breakdowns. When Toyota discovered quality issues in the 1980s, they didn't blame individual workers. They redesigned their production machine through the Toyota Production System, creating feedback mechanisms that detected and corrected problems automatically. Clear roles function as mechanical specifications in this framework. At Netflix, Reed Hastings designed his organization like a high-performance machine, where every position has defined inputs, outputs, and success metrics. Employees understand exactly how their work connects to broader organizational objectives, eliminating confusion and redundant effort that plagues traditional hierarchies. Feedback loops serve as the nervous system of organizational machines. General Electric under Jack Welch implemented systematic performance reviews that functioned like mechanical gauges, providing continuous data about system performance. These mechanisms allowed rapid adjustments before small problems became major breakdowns. Effective machine designers regularly step back to analyze their systems holistically. They identify bottlenecks, eliminate unnecessary complexity, and upgrade components that limit overall performance. This requires leaders to think like engineers rather than traditional managers, focusing on system architecture instead of daily firefighting. The mechanical approach also enables predictable scaling. When McDonald's expands globally, they replicate proven machine designs rather than reinventing operations for each location. This systematic thinking allows rapid growth while maintaining quality standards across thousands of locations. Organizations that master mechanical thinking develop remarkable competitive advantages. They respond faster to market changes, allocate resources more efficiently, and create environments where both individual contributors and collective performance flourish through intelligent design rather than heroic effort alone. Chapter 4: Mastering Decision-Making and Self-Awareness, Part 1: Emotion versus Logic. Detaching for clear decisions. When Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman discovered that judges gave harsher sentences before lunch than after, he revealed a profound truth about human decision-making. Our emotions hijack our judgment far more than we realize. This finding challenges everything we believe about professional objectivity and rational thinking. Ray Dalio learned this lesson the hard way during Bridgewater Associates' early years. In 1982, he made what he later called his most humbling mistake, predicting a market crash that never came. His conviction about being right blinded him to contradictory evidence. The emotional attachment to his prediction nearly destroyed his hedge fund. This painful experience taught him that successful decision-making requires creating distance between our emotions and our choices. The challenge lies in recognizing when emotions drive our thinking. Dalio discovered that our brains often construct logical-sounding justifications for emotionally driven decisions. Consider how Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes convinced herself that her blood testing technology worked, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Her emotional investment in being the next Steve Jobs prevented her from seeing reality clearly. Dalio developed practical techniques to combat this tendency. He instituted believability-weighted decision-making at Bridgewater, where the credibility of the person making an argument mattered as much as the argument itself. When discussing investment decisions, team members had to rate their confidence levels and explain their reasoning before revealing their conclusions. The most powerful tool Dalio advocates is creating temporal distance from important decisions. Amazon's Jeff Bezos famously uses the regret minimization framework, imagining himself at age 80 and asking which choice he would regret not making. This mental time travel helps strip away immediate emotional responses that cloud judgment. Physical techniques also help achieve emotional detachment. Dalio recommends writing down the pros and cons of major decisions, forcing the brain to engage analytical rather than emotional processing. Research by UCLA psychologist Matthew Lieberman shows that simply labeling our emotions reduces their intensity and improves decision quality. The aviation industry provides an excellent model for emotional detachment. Pilots use standardized checklists even in emergencies because stress impairs judgment. Captain Chesley Sullenberger's successful Hudson River landing in 2009 exemplified this principle. He followed established procedures despite the unprecedented situation, saving all 155 people aboard. Creating systems that force rational evaluation becomes crucial for consistent success. Dalio suggests establishing decision criteria before emotions arise, much like Warren Buffett's investment rules that prevent him from chasing hot stocks during market euphoria. The goal isn't eliminating emotions entirely. They provide valuable information about our values and motivations. Instead, successful decision-makers learn to acknowledge emotions while preventing them from driving choices. This balance between feeling and thinking creates the foundation for principled decision-making that withstands the test of time. Part 2. The Two Selves, the Thinker and the Watcher. When Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in Economics, he revealed something remarkable. Our minds operate with two distinct systems of thinking, but most people remain unaware of this internal dialogue that shapes every decision they make. Ray Dalio discovered this same phenomenon through decades of building Bridgewater Associates into the world's largest hedge fund. He observed that successful leaders possess an unusual ability to step outside themselves during critical moments, watching their own thoughts and reactions as if from above. This metacognitive skill separates exceptional performers from those who remain trapped by their immediate impulses and biases. The thinker represents our immediate experiential self. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings faced the 2011 Quickster backlash, his thinker felt defensive, wanting to justify the unpopular decision to split DVD and streaming services. This part of our consciousness experiences stress, excitement, frustration, and pride in real time. It makes snap judgments, reacts to criticism, and pushes forward with gut instincts. The watcher operates differently. This observational self notices patterns, questions assumptions, and maintains perspective during emotional storms. Hastings activated his watcher when he stepped back to genuinely assess customer feedback rather than dismiss it. The watcher asked uncomfortable questions. Are we solving the right problem? What signals are we missing? This internal observer ultimately led Netflix to reverse course and apologize publicly. Developing your watcher requires deliberate practice. Start by creating pause moments throughout your day. When facing any significant decision, ask yourself, what is my thinker experiencing right now? Notice physical sensations, emotional reactions, and immediate impulses without judgment. Amazon's Jeff Bezos famously implemented this during heated meetings by taking what he called thinking breaks to observe his own reactions before responding. The most powerful exercise involves recording your predictions and reasoning before major decisions, then reviewing them months later. Venture capitalist Mark Andreessen maintains decision journals specifically to strengthen his watcher's ability to spot recurring blind spots. This practice reveals how often our immediate reactions mislead us. Professional poker players master this dual awareness by necessity. Annie Duke, former World Series of Poker champion, learned to observe her thinker's emotional responses to bad beats, while her watcher maintained focus on probability calculations and opponent behavior. This separation enabled her to make optimal decisions regardless of recent outcomes. The watcher doesn't eliminate the thinker's insights. Instead, it creates space for both perspectives to inform better choices. When Oprah Winfrey faced the James Frey controversy over fabricated memoir details, her watcher helped her recognize that her thinker's loyalty to an author was compromising her commitment to truth. This awareness enabled her to issue a public apology and strengthen her show's credibility standards. Building this internal observer transforms decision-making from reactive to responsive, creating the foundation for principled leadership that adapts while maintaining core values. Part 3. Continuous evaluation. Feedback loops for growth. When Intel faced a devastating crisis in 1994 with the discovery of a floating point error in their Pentium processor, CEO Andy Grove's response demonstrated the transformative power of continuous feedback systems. Rather than dismissing initial customer complaints, Intel established immediate feedback channels that revealed the magnitude of their reputation damage, ultimately leading to a $475 million recall that saved the company's long-term credibility. Ray Dalio's approach to continuous evaluation operates on the same principle of radical transparency. At Bridgewater Associates, every meeting is recorded and every decision tracked through what Dalio calls feedback loops. These aren't casual check-ins, but systematic processes designed to expose weaknesses before they become catastrophic failures. Think of it like a pilot's pre-flight checklist, but applied to every significant decision your organization makes. The key lies in creating what Dalio terms believable feedback sources. When Netflix CEO Reed Hastings received brutal criticism for the 2011 Quickster debacle, he didn't retreat from feedback. Instead, he expanded his company's customer data collection and internal review processes. This systematic approach to gathering honest input helped Netflix pivot successfully to streaming dominance while competitors like Blockbuster collapsed. But here's where most organizations fail. They treat feedback as an event rather than a continuous process. Dalio advocates for daily self-assessment routines combined with regular peer evaluations. Amazon's Jeff Bezos institutionalized this through their two-pizza team structure, where small teams continuously measure and report on their performance metrics. Each team becomes a feedback loop, constantly adjusting based on real-time data rather than quarterly reviews. The magic happens when you combine quantitative metrics with qualitative insights. Dalio suggests tracking both hard numbers and softer observations about team dynamics, decision quality, and personal blind spots. When Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz returned to lead the company in 2008, he implemented daily store visits and customer feedback sessions that revealed operational weaknesses invisible from the executive suite. Consider implementing what Dalio calls dot collecting, systematically gathering observations about people's performance and decision patterns over time. This creates a comprehensive picture that single incidents might distort. The pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson uses similar principles in their post-crisis reviews, analyzing not just what went wrong, but how their decision-making processes led to those outcomes. The most powerful aspect of continuous evaluation is its compound effect. Small course corrections, made consistently based on reliable feedback, prevent the dramatic pivots that often signal organizational crisis. When you build feedback into your daily operations rather than waiting for annual reviews, you create what Dalio describes as an evolutionary organization, one that adapts continuously rather than lurching between periods of stagnation and dramatic change. Part 4. Principles as recipes. Systemizing choices for success. When McDonald's developed their franchise system in the 1950s, they discovered something remarkable. Success could be replicated through documented processes. Ray Kroc didn't just create restaurants. he created a system of repeatable decisions that transformed inexperienced franchisees into successful business owners. This same logic drives Dalio's approach to principles as recipes for consistent success. The recipe metaphor captures something essential about how effective people operate. Just as a chef doesn't reinvent techniques for each dish, successful individuals don't start from scratch with every decision. They develop tested approaches that work reliably across different situations. Netflix exemplifies this approach through their culture document, which codifies decision-making criteria for everything from hiring to content creation. Their keeper test principle provides a clear framework that managers apply consistently, regardless of personal preferences or emotions. The power of principled recipes lies in their ability to scale quality. When Southwest Airlines documented their operational principles in the 1970s, they created something more valuable than procedures. They created decision-making DNA that could be replicated across thousands of employees. Their principle of low-cost, high-frequency, point-to-point became a filter for every major choice, from aircraft selection to route planning. Consider how this differs from intuitive decision-making. Intuition serves us well in familiar territory, but it fails when we encounter new challenges or need to delegate decisions to others. Amazon's leadership principles function as shared recipes that enable distributed decision-making across a massive organization. When faced with competing priorities, employees can reference principles like customer obsession or bias for action to make choices aligned with company values. The documentation process itself creates clarity. Writing down your principles forces you to articulate the logic behind successful decisions. Warren Buffett's investment criteria, refined over decades, became a checklist that prevents emotional mistakes during market volatility. His principle of only investing in businesses he understands has saved Berkshire Hathaway from countless technology bubble disasters. Effective principles evolve through testing and refinement. Toyota's continuous improvement philosophy treats every problem as an opportunity to strengthen their decision-making recipes. When quality issues arise, they don't just fix the immediate problem. They update their principles to prevent similar failures. The final step involves sharing these recipes with others. When leaders document and teach their principles, they multiply their decision-making capacity. Google's 20% time principle, allowing engineers to spend 1 day per week on personal projects, became a repeatable formula for innovation that produced Gmail, AdSense, and Google News. Building your own principled recipes requires honest reflection on what consistently works. Start with decisions you've made well repeatedly. Identify the underlying logic and test these frameworks in new situations. Over time, you'll develop a personal operating system that guides choices with the reliability of a trusted recipe.